Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Palisades. You all know that I'm Reverend Sonia Ketchian, but I don't know if anybody's on Zoom that might not know. I'm so grateful to be with you all. As we come together in this service, let us be reminded of the aspirations and intentions that this community was built upon. We are an intentionally diverse and inclusive congregation. Whomever you are, whatever you believe, however you identify, and whomever you love, you are welcome here. And isn't that a wonderful thing that we have a place that we could be ourselves and be free and have a voice and share our faiths and our hearts. So as we gather, let us take a moment to recognize the indigenous people whose land we practice and we built this congregation upon. For us here, it is the Lenape, Munsee, Ramapo people. And let us hold them in reverence and hold their home and their land in reverence as we go into our service today. Okay, so I'd like to take this moment to introduce Reverend Chani Getter. Chani will be sharing later on in our service, but I can't have Chani here without sharing the details of having this extraordinary person with us. So Reverend Chani Getter grew up as an ultra-Orthodox Hasidic. Grew up in an ultra-Orthodox Hasidic home in Rockland County. With barely a high school diploma, Chani entered into an arranged marriage at 18. 5 years and 3 children later, Chani left Chani's husband and as a single parent began a journey of self-discovery. While Chani's parents initially supported the decision to leave the marriage, Chani's decision to get a driver's license and buy a car was a deal breaker, and Chani was disowned, and so were Chani's children. While working full-time and raising 3 children, Chani received a bachelor's in human development and went on to receive a master's in social work from Rutgers University. Chani's deep spirituality called Chani to explore the many forms and expressions of the divine. Chani received an interfaith ministry ordination from One Spirit Interfaith Seminary. Thank you. I'm so glad that Chani and I have passed through this same seminary, and Chani was the person who actually opened up my heart to having a relationship with the divine, and was one of my teachers, and I've been ever changed. So thank you. In 2013, Chani joined the staff of Footsteps, an organization that helps individuals leaving ultra-Orthodox Judaism. Chani continues with them, though now is more focused on her personal psychotherapy practice. Chani remains the scholar in residence with them and continues to work with them. Chani focuses Chani's practice on individuals and couples, also specializing in people raised in insular or fundamental religious communities. Today, having mended fences and reconnected with Chani's family of origin, Chani is an proud out gay parent, a spiritual leader and teacher, an established motivational speaker, a certified holistic life coach, a spiritual counselor, a licensed social worker and ritual creator. Chani's influence is far-reaching across the United States and Europe. Chani is featured in Netflix and PBS documentaries. Just Google Chani's name and you will have much to learn and to know about Chani. You'll have the tip of the iceberg today, but there's so much to know. Chani has been written up in the New York Times, articles about Chani in the New Yorker, and if you go on Chani's website, there is about 20 different places where you could find pieces on Chani and the work Chani has done. I could not be more grateful and delighted to have Reverend Hani with us today. Please join me in welcoming Reverend Hani Getter.
Ina mitzar karatia anani ba'merchavya la lai 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 yara lai 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 na na nai 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 na na nai nai nai. From the depth, I call to you. And you listened. Min hametzar, from the depth, from that narrow space, from the place of sorrow and the place of pain, I called. Psalms. The word metzar, Mitzrayim, the word Mitzrayim is the Hebrew word for Egypt. Hebrew is the kind of language that we have 3 letters and then everything builds along those letters. We call those 3 letters a shorash, which means the root of the word. And then we just kind of add letters to that to make it present, to make it future, to make it past, to make it possessive, to include it as a individual or a plural word, and we just kind of keep changing it. We make it into a noun and a verb, and it's all the same 3 letters that we just play with and we put vowels around it. Mitzrayim, the word for Egypt, comes from the root metzar, which I began this song with, which means narrow place. And if we even made it even smaller, we did matzar, the word would mean M in front of any word in Hebrew, if it's not the root of the word, comes from the word from. So if I want to say from my heart, I said libi, right? From my heart. Lev is heart, and so libi is my heart, lev from heart, right? So in Hebrew, we just kind of play a lot with words, okay? And it's just because the language is such that the language comes from root words. The word metzar means narrow, and if we would just say tsar, it means pain. And metzar, which means from pain. And so every time when we think we come to this time of year, when we come from walking into in a few days to Passover, we think and we talk about leaving Egypt. But really what we're talking about is leaving metzar, leaving that narrow place, leaving the place that has been full of pain for us. And in the Haggadah, which is the book that we read during the Passover Seder, it is required for each and every one of us to feel as if we ourselves have left Egypt. Many of us may or may not have been to Egypt and have maybe even loved it. So what does that mean that each and every one of us is required to imagine ourselves leaving Egypt? What the Haggadah is asking us is for each and every one of us to create the Seder or this ritual, or maybe now this particular service, to take the time and to leave the places that make us feel narrow or squished or full of pain. Each and every one of us, being in human bodies, we experience pain. My pain may be different than yours, probably is. And what pains me may or may not pain you. But what makes us feel narrow, we all have those things, right? It makes us feel narrow. It makes us feel just tight. It makes us feel like, ow, I can't move. I need space. Right? Each and every one of us have that. And so my invitation for the next 10 minutes as I speak is to take a breath and to remember either a moment you felt narrow or what keeps you narrow right now. If we're going to do the Seder, right, then we need to get to that other side. So what makes us feel narrow in this moment in our life? And that changes throughout our life, right? But in this moment, what makes us feel narrow? What makes us feel pain? What makes us feel like we want to get to the other side? We want to sit on Wednesday night if we're having a Seder, or just now as we finish this particular service, we want to walk through that time and we want to leave and say, I am out of that narrow place. Or at least, I have hope that I might get out, right? Because hope in itself, desire in itself is the answer to so much of our pain. And so, Virginia Satir, she was one of the first family therapists, came up with this idea called the process of change. And it's been used in many different ways, and I've adapted it to this now. And I hope that you'll come along with me as we do this process. So the first point of the process of change is the status quo. And that means that each and every one of us have a status quo. That's our mental health, our physical health, our emotional health, our social standing, our financial standing, our careers, our partner, or our, like, what relationship we're in or not, our sexual orientation, our gender identity, the color of our skin, the way we perceive ourselves, right? We all have this like kind of status quo we walk around. And we walk around with that, and it doesn't mean it's always healthy, right? My mental health might be that I have a client, for example, their mental health is always suicide ideation, right? But that's their status quo. Status quo is not good or bad, it just is. It just is, and we all have that. And so as I speak, think about your own status quo. What is your sexual identity? What is your gender identity? What is your relationship identity in this moment? What does your physical health look like? What does your emotional health look like? How do you identify race-wise? Where do you come from? Like all of these kind of things that we don't necessarily think about, but they all make us each into the people that we are. And we walk around saying, this is my status quo. This is how I walk around in the world, right? And then what happens? Virginia Satir says that a foreign object comes in. And this foreign object can be a thought. It can be a book we're reading. It can be something somebody tells us. It can be something we see on the news. It can be a practice that we have that opens something up inside of us we hadn't thought about before or felt before, right? It can be anything. And I often think about a client of mine who went through who did a DNA test for their child because the child's father was not in the child's life and they knew very little about the family. And her child said to her mom, would you also take the DNA test? Just so that we can both have it. And it came back that she's not her brother's full sister, that she's a half brother, a half sibling. And so she called her older brother and she said, do you know about this? And he's like, and he just went into a rant about this time when he was around the age that she was born and her mother was having an affair. And she found out she's Hispanic, right? Literally half Hispanic. And her identity, right, was, first of all, the fact that her dad that raised her wasn't her dad, right? The fact that all of this was kind of kept secret. She has 4 siblings she didn't know about, right? Everything changed from a DNA test that she took for her son to find out his health, right? So sometimes we do something and the foreign object that comes in is like, whoa! And now everything shifts and yet nothing shifts. Because really, she's been this way her whole life. She just didn't know, right? And so like everything shifts and nothing shifts at the same time. And so when this foreign object comes in, it begs us to change. It begs us to examine. It begs us to look inward. And the next phase is called chaos. Because guess what? when something shifts, whether it's our health, whether it's someone close to us dying, whether it's a book we read or a thought we have, everything feels unsteady. And we're like, whoa, what do I do now? Right? We're totally like flabbergasted by it. And so the chaos ensues simply because who we were will never again be. Because we can't go back to not knowing what we know now. It's not possible. We might want it, we might desire it, but it's not possible. And so the chaos particularly happens strongly when we try going back. And we all want to do that because we're used to it, because we know it, because it feels familiar. Do you know that according to the rabbis, 2/3 of the Israelites did not leave Egypt and chose to stay and be slaves? 2/3. They're part of that culture. Whoever that is, we don't know. They don't get to tell the story. Right? What?
Another DNA test.
Another DNA test, yeah. Right? They don't get to tell the story. Because it's so scary that we're like hunkering down. Okay, I'm gonna stay, I'm gonna do this thing that I've done my whole life. Because it feels safe and it feels good and it's too scary and I don't know why, but a million reasons show up. Danan Perry writes this, is an author and writes about the trapeze. And he says that each and every one of us are like holding on to a trapeze bar in our life and knowing 100% at one point in time we see another trapeze bar coming towards us. And it has our name on it. It literally says, Chani, next phase. And we know with 100% knowing that we need to swing and we need to catch it. And that this bar no longer works. And he writes that every single time that happens, every single time, he prays that he won't have to let go. Even though he knows in this inner knowing, he prays that he wouldn't have to let go before he catches that bar. That's what he prays for, right? But he knows that he has to. And I add that if we swing long and hard enough, then we get ready so that when we let go, it is not so scary. Right? Because we're all gonna have to let go, we're all gonna have to get to that other trapeze bar. But if we swing hard and strong and consistent, we will be able to let go and get to the other side. And so we do. How do we swing? We do the next phase of Virginia Satir, which is called integrating new learning. And so we learn something new or we try something new. We ask a different question. We hold silence for longer. We create a practice for ourselves. We take a walk. We read another book that might open us up to more information. We make a session with a spiritual counselor or a therapist or even a friend. And we slowly begin to shift. And it's in tiny, itty bitty changes. Until one day we've integrated enough of the learning that we do something and we look at ourselves and we say, wow, I'm in my new status quo. Right? How many of us have said something or something came out of our mouth or done something and say, I really did change. It really did happen. I really have grasped that other trapeze bar and I don't even know when it happened. Because it is with small and consistent steps that we swing from one to the other. Doesn't happen overnight, but it happens with consistent steps. And the more we integrate this new learning, whatever that new learning is, whatever is calling in our heart to be explored next, whatever we are being told and asked to become, we become on the other side. And so the way out of that metzar, the way out of that narrow place, is through consistent, small, deliberate steps. So take a moment and think about what you had thought about when I opened up. What is your narrow place? What would it take to get to the other side if you did one thing different? If you integrated one new learning, even if that thing is lighting a candle and asking for inspiration on what to do next, because we don't know. But what if you do know? Think about one tiny thing, because the difference of going this way and that way is the tiny movement of the pencil. The invitation is to know what your soul is calling you to do next, to step into that one thing at a time, so that on the other side, whenever that is, because time is a construct, when we get to that other side, we have a new status quo. Gender, sexual, social, financial, all of the different ways in which we integrate into the world. It's just slightly different on the other side, so that the process can start again and again and again, because that is the human process. We all change, we all grow. Even if we do nothing, our body changes. And we need to live with those changes. But the invitation is to notice and to be present. Thank you for listening. Min ha-metzar karatia anani b'merchavia. Thank you.
If you like this video, please like us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and click on the bell to be notified whenever we post a new video. Thank you.